Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Strategic Frontlines. And today we have with us Ambassador Gurjit Singh. He was our ambassador to Germany, Indonesia, and Ethiopia. I welcome you, Ambassador Singh, to this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And we are going to discuss the recent German Chancellor Friedrich Merz visit to New Delhi on January 12th and 13th. It was his first trip to Asia, and it coincided with the 75 years of our diplomatic relations and 25 years of strategic partnership. So a lot of things had happened and a lot of things were discussed. And we can say, we can categorize it into three main pillars. The discussion went on. The first one was trade and economy. The second being technology, where innovations, including green and sustainable development partnership, education and skilling were discussed. And the last one was defense and security. Apart from that, Indo-Pacific, connectivity, and global issues were also discussed. So we'll be discussing all these issues with Ambassador Gurjit Singh. But first, Ambassador Singh, I would like to ask you is today's geopolitical situation. The geopolitics is in a flux. How significant is this visit of the Chancellor to India, considering the transatlantic tensions, the persistence of trade warfare, the fragmentation of the trade systems, the continuation of geo-economic rivalry, which has impacted supply chains, and on the other hand, there are interventions and domestic uprising which may have global impacts. Especially since the time Trump has come, there has been a lot of instability. His constant threats about taking Greenland. All these issues, how these two countries are going to view it, your initial views.
Thank you. So in your video, you said that clause is committed to stability, security, right? So I think the one way of looking at the Merz visit is where India and Germany were trying to find stability, security, and equality in a world which is topsy-turvy. So between blurred lines, we were trying to create clarity. And I think that is the most important part of this visit. Secondly, I think it is important that, Germany, since the Ukraine war, has become more introverted and their economy is in a deep dive. They are not the robust economy which led the EU. They are a struggling economy. So that also makes them look for more stable partners, particularly to have confident supply chains, which are not dependent on any one power. Now, that is, of course, rich because Germany has been the one country which is really responsible for the dependence on China because their profits of their companies come from there. So, the stark difference is that the German government policy sees China as a strategic rival and wants to move away. But German industry, already reeling under losses and poor performance in Germany, does not want to give up the China trade and investment from where the profits come. So there is a lack of synchronization between German government and German industry. Now with India, the German government is in sync. Last year they had the new India strategy paper. That clearly shows that they want to work with India across the board. But you may recall that when the last chancellor came for the intergovernmental conference, I think 2 years ago, they had a huge business delegation, the Asia Pacific Conference, but they were talking to each other, not to India. So this time, Chancellor Merz brought along 23 CEOs who were talking to India and not to each other. That was an important facet I think we need to note. So, geopolitically, Germany looking for a new stability and security relationship with India and bringing forth their governmental program, which have been going on for some years, but now consolidating them. But more than that, bringing business, bringing technological universities and academic universities together for a academia industry interface with India. Basically, Germany is looking at providing a pole of stability in a disrupted world.
Very well said, Ambassador Singh. And you were talking about both the governments are synchronized as far as trade and other things are concerned. So, my next question is as far as trade is concerned, the two countries' bilateral trade, as far as 2024 is concerned, was US dollar 50 billion, which is a very healthy trade. But is this enough? How can the two countries untap the economic potential? Because there is a lot of economic potential for both the countries to go. And especially, according to you, what are the areas where we need to work? Because it was heartening to see that Chancellor Merz also recommended Germany as an attractive location for investment purposes. So, how do you think our SMEs are going to take it? And what particular areas you feel we need to work and increase our trade out?
Very important, because traditionally trade and investment have been the core of the Indo-German partnership. But I think on this visit, in the joint statement, item number one was defense and security, showing the change in preferences. But yes, come back to what you asked me. So the actual trade is about 38 billion. The rest is services. And the surplus is on the German side. Secondly, no, this 50 billion together is about 1/4 of India's trade with the EU.
EU, yes.
Right. So, as a percentage and as a proportion, it's very high, but it's certainly nowhere near the German-China trade, which is almost 5 times as big. But there's no point comparing apples with oranges. We need to make sure that our 50 becomes 100 by in the next 3-4 years. The other part is investment. Normally, investment should lead to project exports and contribute to the export basket. But when I was ambassador, I had a study commissioned by EY and CII, which correctly showed in 2018 that actually in the last 10 years, there is more Indian investment going to Germany than German investment to India. Now, this is because old German companies, the Bosch, the Siemens, things like that, have been in India for 100 years. So they are reinvesting in India from the profits they make. There is no new FDI coming in. And of the 2,000 companies which the Indo-German Chamber says are in India, almost 1,000 are actually representative offices selling technology and devices. They are not investors. So the number of investing companies is actually not large, and we need to double that or take the rep offices and convert them into at least part investments, even as branch offices or as service providers or as parts manufacturers. Something needs to happen. You just can't keep saying, I'll manufacture and sell here, whether it's a power unit or a medical device or things like that. The third aspect is Indian investment into Germany is going in for 3 reasons. First, because there is no India-EU FTA, many companies, particularly in the IT sector, became Germanized or Europeanized so that they don't have to face the demerits of not having an FTA. So they have adopted European standards and have become, for all practical purposes, European companies. They frankly are not votaries of the FTA anymore. Secondly, Indian companies go to acquire companies from whom they can gather technology. So, as you know, Germany has almost 1,200 Mittelstand who are technology champions. So, they are normally family owned, family run, but now Indian companies are acquiring them. And under the Make in India Mittelstand program, we have got almost 2 billion euros of investment from the Mittelstand into India as well. So, this area of high technology investment and counter investment is very important. The third is Indian companies have acquired German companies simply to get a foothold into the European market. I mean, if you're a tire company and you acquire a tire company which is operating in 14 EU countries, then you export something and you can sell it in 14 markets through your owned company. Now, this is the strategy Indian companies have adopted. I don't see a counter strategy by German companies. German companies typically don't like joint ventures. They prefer to go it alone and they'll do a niche product which they will sell and be happy with it. So, unlike the Japanese who bring in, the Keiretsu, a group of companies which will make not only a car but the parts, bring in a bank, bring in technology, German companies come alone. A few car companies have brought in a few parts companies, but many of them are actually bringing in R&D centers, much more than Japan is. The other part is that Japan uses its ODA to commercialize investment. So if there is 4 billion of ODA per annum, they will convert it to at least $2 billion of investment. Germany has $1 billion of ODA annually at least. But German companies, as a rule, do not convert it into business. So you are building green metros or putting up green transmission lines. But very rarely have I seen convert that to manufacturing or service industry in India. They do the project and carry on. So those are the differences. And this is why German investment as a group has not risen. Secondly, German companies often look at the India as a small market because for their niche product, it is a small market. They are not heavily into consumer products. But slowly, I think German companies are beginning to see that by investing in India and setting up a production base, you can access the ASEAN India FTA and export to ASEAN countries on preferential or zero tariff basis. So that understanding is slowly coming, and the 600 million strong ASEAN market is now being added to considerations. At the same time, there is Africa, with whom India has a preferential trade system. I think there also German companies are now looking at doing it. So this means supply chains are now likely to play a bigger role.
No, you rightly pointed out, and the fact that with Chancellor Merz was accompanied by many CEOs, and they had a meeting also, Indian CEOs and the German CEOs. So hopefully the things will change in future, and it looks much more brighter now as it was compared to last few years. But you were also talking about technology. So coming to technology, what we know that the German technology is quite niche and good. So what are the technologies which were discussed? And I feel that especially critical and emerging technologies is one area, and other is including semiconductors, critical minerals. They are very important areas, and both nations want to have a resilient supply chain architecture. So, how both the countries are going to approach as far as critical and emerging technologies are concerned, and semiconductors and critical minerals are there? Your views?
Yeah, thank you. So first, let me comment on the German CEOs. No, it is not that India, German CEOs have not been meeting. I mean, since I have been dealing with Germany since 2015, now 10 years, there are so many CEOs meeting, almost the same CEOs, but nothing really has happened, as I told you. Why is that? Even now, when the CEOs meeting took place, and I saw some interviews of CEOs, They are all talking of possibilities. The Indian and German CEO, they're both talking of possibilities. But very few are talking of what they are doing together. That I am not seeing. Now coming to technology. So normally a strategic partnership is based on defense, space and nuclear. That is what we have with France. But with France, we don't have such a big business or trade. Now with Germany, these three were missing. So now defense and space has come in. Nuclear is not going to come in. So the first technology that I would look at is defense. So there is going to be a roadmap for defense industrial cooperation. So the Germany has lifted the sanctions or restrictions on a large number of items which earlier India would import with difficulty. So now German companies can actually invest in India for co-production or joint venture for aspects of defense related technology and even have joint ventures to produce in Germany by producing something in India or doing the software in India and then taking it. Because see, Germany has $500 billion of new defense spending to do. So they are trying to spend their way out of economic trouble by encouraging companies to do defense production. In this, India can be a good technology partner. One. Second, there has been a roadmap for green hydrogen. Every few years, that roadmap improves, and today it has become a commercial partnership. And this is very rapid actually. So this time, not only was there a commercial partnership, but the first deal, I think, of 300 tons of green ammonia to be sold by an Indian manufacturer to the German commodity company. So this opening of the German market and hopefully the EU market for green hydrogen, green ammonia is extremely important as a technology. The third aspect is green, because this is something which has been happening. Germany has been part of our sustainability story. So they are funding metro, they are funding, battery operated ferries, green transmission lines, as things like that. Now, in 2022, I think 2022 or the year, when Prime Minister went to Germany and met Olaf Scholz, a 10 billion euro sustainability partnership was announced. Now, the good thing is that in these 3 years, 5 billion of that has already been committed to these kind of green projects, more metros, more ferries, more inland waterways which are battery operated, more green technology and solar and wind power factories. So this is working well. This needs to be further commercialized. We need to see more German companies ready to manufacture assets in India or work with Indian companies to manufacture them and then work in third country market under trilateral partnership in Africa or ASEAN to export them. So this is the green technology partnership. Now you correctly mentioned the semiconductor partnership, the partnership on critical minerals. These are very important. Now these are new in the sense they are nascent. They are still being looked at. But I think as part of the decoupling that Germany is looking at, these become extremely important. So I think these will work with speed. Now, in all these 5 areas, the important thing to note is that these are G2G programs. They are not yet B2B programs, except on that one green hydrogen deal. We need to work faster to convert these to B2B. Now, for instance, the 5 billion euros spent on green projects in India, as I mentioned to you, they are not converted to business or investment. So that needs to change. I hope I made myself clear on this.
Yes, no, you rightly pointed out because a lot had been happening in green and sustainable development partnership, what both countries have. And it is not only with renewable energy, climate mitigation, and urban development, and hydrogen, what you spoke about, green ammonia, what you spoke about. It's rightly you pointed out all those things. You also mentioned about defense and security. There were also talks about strengthening defense and security cooperation, having deeper military to military cooperation through joint exercises. And can you highlight a little bit about the development? There were talks about defense industrial cooperation roadmap they were talking about. So, what is it all about?
So, Germany, under the Indo Pacific policy, is trying to do more in the Indo Pacific, including in anti piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden. Now, in that anti piracy operations and in the Indo Pacific, India is their primary partner. Now, of course, Germany does not have the capacity or the wherewithal, let us say, like France or UK have, to be seen all the time. But their one ship, two ships keep coming more frequently to the region where India is the core. Now, besides coming here and doing exercises on anti piracy and around India, they have also shaken off their concerns, anxieties, and are ready to participate in our maritime exercises like Milan. And for the first time last year, they sent Air Force to participate in the Tarang air exercises. So they are overcoming certain hurdles in their own minds. The third aspect is they have finally agreed to put an officer in the International Fusion Center in
Fusion
Guru.
Center.
Now,
Yes.
most countries which take the Indo-Pacific seriously, that is a good sign. That is
Yes.
happening. Third aspect now is for more exercises, more exchanges, all that is fine. But how do you move to hard power? Now, one of the things is that there's a long pending submarine deal,
Yeah.
which did not reach fruition because the nitty gritty is still being negotiated. But it is my expectation that the chosen submarine of Thyssen Group Marine Systems will sign a deal with Mazagon Docks, perhaps this year, and start manufacturing of 6 API submarines, which will be delivered over a period of 6 years. That will give a big boost to manufacturing
Yes.
and perhaps bring in ancillary production in India, including transfer of technology. This is very important. Besides this, there is an effort now, as I said, since there is 500 billion euros to spend on new defense projects, Germany is trying to push their companies to undertake more plans to increase defense production. And not only of Leopard tanks and stuff they already produce, but new things which are in terms of missiles, in terms of rockets, in drones, technology. You know, the new wars are fought like that. Now, in that, India can be a good partner because we have the technology, we have the human capital, and we are a reliable partner. So I think that defense industrial cooperation is now the framework has to be set. Agreement is there, we must do it. So this industrial corridor roadmap is the framework agreement which we will negotiate hopefully this year. And once that is there, that will give the green signal to the private sector to say, under these conditions, you are now free to go to India to manufacture. Now, one thing good was that Rheinmetall, which produces Leopard tanks and many other things, for long years was blacklisted by India. Now, quietly, that blacklisting has been lifted, and Rheinmetall is already looking at some production facilities for ancillaries in India, which could expand. The other thing is Airbus. You know, there is a transport aircraft Airbus being produced in Gujarat by Tatas. But Airbus itself has orders of more than 500 A320s. So finally, they are opening an MRO a maintenance and repair
Repeat.
facility where many aircraft from the region would come here instead of going to Germany or China for servicing. And slowly these MROs will lead to a dynamic uh, part production facilities. So this is what I see happening in the defense segment.
I think it's a very important part, what you call it, as far as India-German relationship is concerned, because India is also opening its defense ecosystem with Atmanirbhar Bharat. The Germans can do a lot, and you rightly pointed out the areas, and we need to sit down and work. What are the areas which we need to work? And so, to start with submarine project, it's really good with the ancillaries and everything coming up. It looks to be a very positive project. Coming to other areas, Ambassador Singh, they've also talked about connectivity, and they spoke about India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, that is the IMEC corridor, and they also spoke about the triangular development cooperation, having projects in Africa and Latin America, which you also mentioned a little bit earlier. So they want to scale up the TDC projects in Ghana, Cameroon, and Malawi. So, how do you think this kind of a TDC project is going to go ahead? Because we are doing a lot of work with Japan. Japan-India bilateral in Africa and other places are also taking place. So, how do you see this?
So where connectivity is concerned, Germany is participating a lot in the rail segment in India. I told you about various metros, but you know this Delhi Meerut rapid train is also German. It is run by Deutsche Bahn. But you know, very often Germany does not get adequate credit for what they do in India. Everybody knows about the Japanese bullet train, but not many people know about this. Similarly, you know, Siemens has taken over the railways locomotive factories and is bringing in new technology to build very powerful locomotives and train Indian capacities and enhance their usage in India as part of Make in India. But these are again not very well known facts. But when you talk of IMECC, I mean, frankly, Germany is on the fringe of that yet. Is when IMECC reaches Europe, then we will see what they do, unless Germany comes forward to fund the Indian part of connectivity of IMECC, which I don't know as yet whether they will do. You know, for instance, I think the UAE is doing in Dholera, you know, with building a port, building connectivity, building this, building that. The Germans don't have such a big vision for any one project yet. So that is the second thing. There is the India-EU connectivity partnership. Now, I don't know what has happened under that. People keep saying something has happened. I have not seen. So Germany could be a part of that. But you know, this all means German ODA has to be used more. And frankly, I think German ODA is now going to shrink given their economic woes rather than expand. So I think connectivity will remain on this railway sector, the inland waterway sector, and things like that. I don't see big connectivity coming even in, let's say, India's neighborhood or IMECC till it grows. Now you ask me about this triangular cooperation. So there are different models of triangular cooperation. With the UK, we have an impact investing fund. With Japan, we are working in the private sector. But with Germany, it is essentially a GIZ grant. The Indians provide the soft power. I mean, the project is conceived between Germany and the host country, and India does the implementation paid for by GIZ. So that is the model. This is also done in Peru, in Latin America, but I don't think it's expanding in Latin America. It seems to be expanding in Ethiopia. But GIZ has funded a large number of agricultural and other projects which Indian companies have implemented, not under G2G triangular, but through bidding. And they've done very effectively to build grain banks, to build land records, digitize them, provide green skilling, provide women's market access. Many things GIZ has done in Africa with Indian companies. Now, there are bigger markets in ASEAN, but there is no Indo-German project in ASEAN. Now, India is a dialogue partner of ASEAN. Germany is a development partner. So we should think of leveraging Germany's development partnership with ASEAN, link it to India's dialogue partnership with ASEAN, and work out a couple of projects which India could do with Germany in ASEAN. I think that is the next big challenge, rather than stick to just grant-based projects, which frankly are good ideas, but are frankly very small.
You rightly pointed out all the areas where we can cooperate, and especially the ASEAN angle, which you had highlighted, is a very important angle, and I hope we do a lot there. The other area which the Prime Minister also discussed was the education, and they have invited the German to open a university here. And the Britishers, the Australians, all of them are trying to open universities in India. So, and the invitation was also given to the Germans. Also, there were talk about skilled mobility, growing, what you call it, exchange of students, researchers, skilled professionals. And on their part, they have also announced a visa-free transit facility for Indian passport holders. So how do you see India, Germany progressing in this particular area?
When I was ambassador, the number of students 10 years ago was 5,000. Today there are 60,000. So evidently, at that time, there was a bill in parliament passed with the help of the Indo-German Parliamentary Friendship Group called the New Passage to India. So the New Passage to India has worked. And there are far many more students going, speaking German, trained in German, and getting scholarships. Now, this is also buttressed by the fact that Germany is offering work visas, either to people who studied there or people with the appropriate skills who are coming there. As a result, the Indian population in Germany has now risen to 300,000, which is huge. Now, when you see that there is an aversion to refugees and migrants, at the same time, there's a welcome to India's talent pool, because Germany's shortage of people, so they also have a demographic loss of dividend. That is being filled by Indians, and they understand the compatibility and complementarity of this. So that is a positive side. Now, after these programs were launched, let's say 4 years ago, the visa processes of Germany did not keep pace. There were large amount of frustrated people, students and skilled people, saying, I have a job, I have admission, but I can't get a visa. Now I think over the last 2 years, finally these visa processes seem to have been streamlined, and there are more clarity, though still slow, more clarity on how the visa works. And we have now got, I think 2 years ago, the mobility agreement with Germany, which is the legal basis for Indians going to Germany to work and study. So this is the good part. Now, what happens here on? Now Germany says that besides highly skilled technical people, they are also finding it a problem to find, let us say, caregivers for the elderly, and
Health industry, yes.
health industry.
Yes.
These are not high-tech jobs.
Yes.
But I think nursing,
Yes.
same kind of thing Japan is looking at. So I think now there will be a new flush of people in these sectors who will learn German, which apparently is easier to learn than Japanese, and find opportunities there. And once you get into Germany, and then the whole Europe becomes your stage. So there are many more opportunities coming out of there. So this is how I see this moving positively ahead.
Ambassador, on this positive note, if you permit, can I take few questions from the audience?
Certainly.
Okay. Nomita wants to ask you, can India become a manufacturing alternative for German industry amidst de-risking from China?
So, this concept of de-risking or decoupling, neither the Americans nor the Europeans are seriously following them because they realize that the depth of their engagement with China is so much that they can't really decouple. And German companies don't want to decouple. As I told you, their profits depend on them. But they want additions, and that they are looking at India. So, additional investments or manufacturing, they are ready to look at India, but it is not always the same thing that they are manufacturing in China. It is different. It is more high technology. There are a lot of global compatibility centers, R&D centers, and yes, manufacturing. So I don't see the Indian manufacturing becoming either an alternative for German industry or for China. But I see it as an additional incentive for German industry to look at instead of expanding in China, expand in India. And as I said, instead of doing everything by yourself in Germany, transfer technology, manufacture at lower cost in India, and then do more joint ventures or backward integration. That is how I see it.
Another question is by Ricky Malhotra. He says, why don't we pitch our own defense products aggressively in European markets and more like facilities in their countries? And
Actually,
MRO like facilities in their countries.
I don't see what defense product we can sell Germany, for instance. What we can offer is that to manufacture your defense product, we can work together using our technology, our brains, our manufacturing capacities, and do things together so that we can provide the inputs and, as PM said, joint production and joint development. That we need to look at in the defense industrial corridor roadmap. MRO like facilities in these countries, I mean, they have enough MROs for their aircraft and this and that. By setting it up there, we only create German jobs. We need to set it up here to create Indian jobs and reduce the cost of servicing. So, as I said, certain Indian companies in IT and in other technology area have created hubs in Germany in order to beat the lack of an FTA. But once the FTA comes, which hopefully should come this year, then I don't see why that would necessarily continue. Perhaps Indian companies would look then, even Indian companies who own German companies could do joint ventures in India. That also we should look at.
Mr. Doku wants to ask you, with Germany's defense policy, how can our partnership address the uneven flow of dual-use technology where China has historically benefited to basically strengthen Indo-Pacific resolve?
So China was preferred because of German industry pressure. But with India, there was always this suspicion that we are friends of Russia. And that was anathema to Germany, which held up many technologies, including dual use. I remember when I was there, one of my major tasks was to keep negotiating through their agencies to get clearances for small arms, small technologies, and stuff like that. But once the bigger German companies get interested, like with China, they will manage the clearances for India. It is a small German company which has the problem, not the big German company. Third thing is that, as I said, for Indo-Pacific, Germany does not have a defense production strategy. They want to put up a defense production strategy for India, which will then become part of the Indo-Pacific strategy. So I think this is going to change. But you have to understand that it is not easy for Germany to overcome its abhorrence of Russia and that looming ghost on their back. Even in India, Chancellor Merz said we would like to wean India away from dependence on Russia. I think most
Russia.
ill-advised comment. You should talk about what you want to do with India. I
Yeah,
mean, don't try and tell us who we should work with. After all, we are doing everything in national interest and we have reduced our dependence on Russia. But what is it that Germany can offer us to replace what Russia is offering us? How much technology transfer can you offer us? So you also have to see before saying these things where you stand. So if Germany
absolutely.
wants to give you clear transfer of technology for aircraft engines, let's say, or for
Yeah,
tanks, or
yeah.
for submarines like we are discussing, certainly
Yes,
we will buy them. But I don't think the model that we should keep buying things off the shelf without joint development and joint production is a sustainable model.
One last question. How does Make in India initiative benefit German companies? And along with it, another question she's asked is how India and Germany are collaborating on renewable energy and climate change, part of it which you have already spoken about. Yeah.
So Make in India, when the Make in India program was launched in Germany in Hanover 2015, when Prime Minister Modi went, uh, and I remember in 2016 I went to the same fair when President Obama was there, and everybody kept saying how good the Make in India show was, and not the American show. So that was the impact it had. But somehow it did not attain the same results that we anticipated. And this is not only our fault. German companies, as I told you, did not come with new investments in a big way. So now in railways, now in defense, now in renewable energy, and in technology, global capability centers, R&D centers, there is much happening in India. So the Make in India, we wanted it as a manufacturing concept. For the Germans, it is mainly a technology concept. The 2 billion euros of investment that we got from German Mittelstand under the Make in India Mittelstand program is again largely technology transfers and local manufacturing, which then goes as inputs into other manufacturing. Coming to the part about climate change and thing, now you see the Americans have junked climate change.
Yeah.
But you see, climate change remains a very important part of the Indo-German narrative, and it will also be a part of the India EU narrative. So India is remaining consistent in its commitment to reduce the greenhouse gases and impact of climate and reduce global warming, in which Germany sees us as a potent partner. And therefore, they should be encouraged now, like green hydrogen, on other areas, how to manufacture in India or support manufacture in India, either through purchase contracts or through technology transfer and things like that. So I think this is an area for the future.
Ambassador Singh, just a small question. It is from my side. Trump has been stating about Greenland. So, what do you think? Will he be taking the Greenland? And if so, then how the Europeans are going to react, and especially NATO and other countries?
So Trump said he's taking Venezuela. He took the Venezuelan president, and the rest of Venezuela is there. Trump said he's going to take Iran. So Iran is quietening down and it is there. Now he says he wants to take Greenland. And the Europeans have already said what they had to say, that they are not happy. So I think Europe suddenly realizes that in their lifetime is not only the Russians and the Chinese who are their problem, but the transatlantic alliance has become a problem.
Yeah.
Frankly, under the existing treaties, America can put 10,000 troops in Greenland without having to change anything and then provide the security, protection, and negotiate commercial deals for tapping into critical minerals and other things if the Greenlanders want it. Simply conquering it is not an idea. So I don't know why they're putting pressure when actually it's not required. You can actually negotiate your way through. I presume that is what will happen. But this is another crack in the transatlantic alliance. And when that Humpty Dumpty is put together again, these cracks will be very visible.
Absolutely. And the way he's going about that, he's going to put tariffs, and the French president and the President Trump, their skirmish. I mean, a lot can happen in future, and we need to observe all those things. And what you rightly pointed out, your analysis is absolutely correct. Ambassador Singh, thank you so much for such a detailed discussion on India-German relationship. And we couldn't have asked for more. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Dr. Roshan, always enjoy being with you. Thank you for inviting
Thank you.
me. Good evening.